The Draconith had ruled the stars for 12,000 years before humans ever learned to make fire, and their empire had stretched across 900 worlds like a great web of silver and light. But empires do not last forever, and even the mightiest creatures must someday face their Enkelivurthus was old beyond counting. His scales had once shone with the deep purple of distant nebulae, but now they had faded to a dull gray like stones left too long in the rain. And he lay in the medical ward of Outpost 7, a forgotten station that orbited a dying star at the edge of known space. He had been many things in his long life. A war scholar who advised emperors, a keeper of histories who remembered events that happened before most species existed, a voice that had shaped the destiny of worlds. But none of that mattered now because he was the last of his kind in this sector of space. And he was dying. The other species on the station avoided him like he carried some terrible disease, though his sickness was simply age and the slow failure of organs that had worked for thousands of years. The Valkyrie believed that being near death would bring bad fortune. The Torvian merchants thought that watching someone die was terrible for business, and the Antlithi simply did not understand why anyone would want to witness the end of a life when they could be doing something more pleasant. So, Kael'Vorthas lay alone in the dim blue light of the medical ward, watching the stars through the great observation window, counting the days until he would join his ancestors in what his people called the Great Silence. And he told himself that he did not mind the loneliness because Draconith were proud creatures who did not need the comfort of lesser beings. Lily Morgan was 11 years old and small for her age, with brown hair that she wore in 2 braids and a gap between her front teeth that she was embarrassed about. Her father was Commander Nathan Morgan, and he had been sent to Outpost 7 as the human representative to the coalition of species, which meant that Lily had to leave Earth and all her friends behind. Her mother had died 3 years ago in an accident at a research station on one of Jupiter's moons, and since then Lily had learned to fill the silence with stories. She read everything she could find, myths and legends and tales from every culture on Earth, and she kept them all on a tablet that she carried everywhere like a treasure. She found the dragon on the 4th day after arriving at the station, following maintenance tunnels that found the dragon on the 4th day after arriving at the station, following maintenance tunnels that the Belinkan other tunnels that the cleaning robots used and that nobody else seemed to care about. The medical ward was nearly empty because most species preferred to die surrounded by their own kind on their home worlds, not in a cold room at the edge of nowhere. When Lily first saw Kael'Vorthas, she stopped and held her breath because he was the largest living thing she had ever seen. His body stretched nearly 40 feet from his great horned head to the tip of his tail, and even lying down he was taller than she was. His scales looked like armor made from old coins, and when he opened his eyes, they glowed like pools of liquid gold. "You should not be here, small creature," Kael'Vorthas said, and his voice was so deep that Lily felt it rumbling in her chest like distant thunder. "I am dying, and my kind do not welcome witnesses to our end." Lily did not run away, though her heart was beating very fast. Instead, she sat down on the cold floor beside his bed and crossed her legs the way she used to do during story time at school. "I know you are dying," she said. "That is why I came." The dragon's golden eyes narrowed, and he lifted his great head, just a little to look at this strange small human who did not seem afraid of him. "You do not fear death, child?" "Everyone fears death," Lily said simply. "But you should not have to be alone while you wait for it." Kael'Vorthas made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a cough. It was hard to tell with dragons. "What do you want from me?" "Human child, do you seek treasure or knowledge or some favor that only a dying dragon can grant?" "I do not want anything," Lily said, and she pulled out her tablet and held it up so he could see it. "I just thought maybe you would like to hear a story." The dragon stared at her for a long moment, and something shifted in his ancient eyes. something that might have been confusion or curiosity, or perhaps just the surprise of being offered something he had not expected. "Your species has only existed for a few 100,000 years," he said. "What stories could you possibly have that would interest someone who remembers the birth of stars?" Lily shrugged. "I do not know, but my mom always said that every story matters, even the small ones, and she said that sometimes the smallest stories are the most important because they remind us what it feels like to be alive." She did not wait for him to say yes or no. She simply opened her tablet and began to read from a book of Greek myth that her mother had given her on her 8th birthday. And she told the dragon about a boy named Icarus who built wings of wax and feathers because he wanted to fly. Vorthas listened without speaking. And when Lily finished the story, he was quiet for a long time. "This Icarus was a fool," he said at last. "He was warned not to fly too close to the sun, and he did it anyway." "Yes," Lily agreed, "but he got to fly, even if it was only for a little while." And now people remember him thousands of years later. The dragon closed his eyes, and Lily thought he had fallen asleep. But then he spoke again, his voice softer than before. "You may come back tomorrow, human child, if you wish to tell more of your small stories." Lily smiled, and it was the first real smile she had smiled since leaving Earth. "My name is Lily," she said, "and I will be here." She got up and walked to the door, but before she left, she looked back at the dragon lying alone in the blue light. "Good night, Vorthas," she said. "I will see you tomorrow." The dragon did not answer, but Lily thought she saw the corner of his mouth curve upward just a little, and she carried that image with her all the way back to her quarters, where she fell asleep, dreaming of stars and dragons and a boy with wings of wax who had wanted nothing more than to touch the sky. Vorthas did not expect the human child to return the next night, because in his experience, most creatures made promises they did not keep. And he had lived long enough to know that kindness was often just a mask for wanting something. But when the lights of the station dimmed to simulate night, he heard small footsteps in the corridor. And then Lily Morgan appeared in the doorway with her tablet clutched against her chest. "I brought more stories," she said. And she sat down in the same spot she had chosen the night before, as if it already belonged to her. The dragon watched her settle in with something that might have been amusement, though his face was difficult to read because dragon expressions were not the same as human ones. "You came back," he said. "I told you I would." Many creatures say things they do not mean. Lily looked up at him with serious brown eyes. "My mom taught me that your word is the most important thing you have, and if you break your promises, then your words do not mean anything anymore." Vorthas was quiet for a moment, thinking about this, and then he lowered his great head onto his folded forelimbs and said, "Tell me a story then, small Lily. If you have come all this way to share your human tales." That night she told him about Odysseus, a man who had spent 10 years trying to get home after a great war. And she described the monsters he faced, and the gods who tried to stop him, and the wife who waited faithfully, even when everyone told her he was dead. "This is foolishness," Vorthas said when she finished. "Your Odysseus could have stayed with the goddess Calypso and lived forever on her island. But instead he chose to return to a mortal woman and eventually die. He chose love over immortality," Lily said. "Because living forever does not mean anything if you are alone." The dragon made a rumbling sound deep in his throat. "The Draconis would never make such a choice. We valued power and knowledge above all else. And we built an empire that lasted 12,000 years. But where is that empire now?" Lily asked softly. Vorthas did not answer, and Lily worried that she had said something wrong. But after a long silence, the dragon simply closed his eyes and said, "Come back tomorrow and bring another story." She came back every night after that, sneaking out of her quarters after her father thought she was asleep. And each night she brought a new tale from her collection. She told him about Thor and Loki and the great tree that held the 9 worlds together. She told him about Anansi, the spider who tricked gods and men. She told him about a girl named Mulan who pretended to be a boy so she could fight in her father's place. The dragon listened to every story without interrupting, though he always had sharp comments when she finished. He said that the Norse gods were foolish to trust Loki, and that Anansi would not have lasted a day against Dracona's scholars, and that Mulan's society was strange for not letting women be warriors. The Draconath did not care if someone was male or female, he told Lily one night. We only cared if they were strong and clever. Then why did your empire fall? Lily asked. Because she had heard whispers on the station about the Draconath, how they had once been the greatest power in the galaxy, and now they were nearly extinct. Levathivas was silent for so long that Lily thought he would not answer. But finally he spoke in a voice that sounded like stones grinding together. There was a plague, he said. It came from a world we had conquered, a tiny organism that our scientists thought was harmless. But it attacked our bodies in ways we could not stop, and within 100 years, 90% of our people were dead. I am sorry, Lily whispered. Do not be sorry, the dragon said. We brought it upon ourselves. We were so certain of our power that we never imagined something so small could destroy us. And when the plague came, we did not know how to be weak. We did not know how to ask for help. He lifted his head and looked at Lily with eyes that held thousands of years of memory. Your people tell stories about heroes who lose everything and then find a way to keep going, he said. The Draconath never told stories like that. We only told stories about winning, about conquest, about glory, and when we started losing, we did not know how to survive. Lily reached out and put her small hand on the dragon's massive forelimb. Her fingers could not even wrap around one of his scales. But she held on anyway. Maybe that is why stories matter, she said. They teach us how to face things we have never faced before. Kelvorthas looked down at her hand on his arm, and something shifted in his ancient face. Something that Lily could not quite name. You are a strange child. Lily Morgan, he said. My mom used to say that too, Lily said. And she smiled even though her eyes were a little wet. She said I was strange in all the best ways. Your mother sounds wise. She was, Lily said. She died 3 years ago. The dragon was quiet for a moment, and then he did something that surprised them both. He curved his long tail around until it rested behind Lily's back like a wall, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his scales. Then we are both alone, he said. Perhaps that is why you understand. Lily leaned back against his tail and opened her tablet. I have more stories, she said. Do you want to hear about a wizard boy who did not know he was magic? Yes, the dragon said. Tell me about this wizard boy. And so she did. While the stars wheeled slowly past the observation window and the station hummed quietly around them, and neither of them felt quite as alone as they had before. 3 weeks passed, and Lily had told Kelvorthas every story she could remember. She had shared myths from Greece and Rome and Egypt, legends from China and Japan and India, folktales from Africa and Europe and the Americas, and stories from books she had loved since she was small enough to sit on her mother's lap. The dragon had listened to all of them, and though he pretended to find them simple and foolish, Lily noticed that he always asked questions, always wanted to know more about the characters and their choices, always remembered details from stories she had told days or weeks before. You have no more tailies, Kelvorthas said one night, and there was something almost sad in his voice. Your well of stories has run dry. Humans have more stories than any species in the galaxy, Lily said proudly. We just tell them in different ways now, in movies and shows and books that go on for hundreds of pages. Then tell me one of these new stories. Lily thought for a moment, scrolling through her tablet. I could tell you about a boy who finds out he is a wizard and goes to a magic school. Or a girl who has to fight in a terrible game to survive. Or a group of friends who find a ring that could destroy the world. The wizard boy, Calvorthus said. You mentioned him before, so Lily began to tell the story of the orphan who discovered magic. And because it was a long story, it took many nights to finish. She described the castle with its moving staircases and talking paintings. The teachers who were kind and the ones who seemed cruel. The friends who became like family and the enemy, who had killed the boy's parent Scalvarthus, listened with more attention than he had given to any story before. And when Lily described how the boy faced death to protect the people he loved, the dragon was silent for a very long time. Your human stories always have the same shape, he said finally. Small people facing great darkness. Ordinary creatures doing extraordinary things. That is because everyone feels small sometimes, Lily said. Everyone feels like they are not strong enough, or smart enough, or brave enough. So we tell stories about people like us who find a way to be heroes anyway. The dragon's golden eyes studied her. The Draconith never told such stories. Our heroes were always the greatest and strongest among us. Emperors and generals and scholars who were already powerful before their tales began. Maybe that is why your stories did not help you when things went wrong, Lily said quietly. If all your heroes were already strong, how would you know what to do when you felt weak? Calvorthus made a sound that was almost a laugh. You speak hard truths for such a small creature. My mom always said that truth does not care how big you are. The dragon lifted his head and looked out the observation window at the stars. Tell me about your mother, Lily Morgan. You speak of her often. But you have never told me her story. Lily's hands went still on her tablet. And for a moment she did not say anything. Because talking about her mother was harder than telling any other story. The words always seemed to get stuck somewhere between her heart and her throat. Her name was Grace, Lily said finally. She was a scientist who studied life on other worlds. She wanted to understand how living things could exist in places where nothing should be able to survive. A worthy pursuit, Calvorthus said. She was funny, Lily continued. Her voice growing stronger. She laughed at her own jokes, even when nobody else did. And she cried during sad movies, even when she had seen them 100 times. And she made the worst pancakes in the entire solar system. The dragon made a curious sound. What are pancakes? They are flat cakes that humans eat for breakfast, and my mom always burned them. But I ate them anyway because she made them with love. Your species has strange customs. She read stories to me every night before bed, Lily said. And now her eyes were wet, but she kept talking. She did different voices for all the characters. A deep voice for the villains and a silly voice for the funny ones, and a soft voice for the ones who were kind. And when she finished reading, she would kiss my forehead and tell me that I could be anyone I wanted to be in my dreams. Calvorthus was very quiet, and when he spoke, his voice was gentler than Lily had ever heard it. How did she die? There was an accident at her research station, Lily said. Something went wrong with the life support systems. And she was in a part of the station that got sealed off. She had enough air for 2 hours. And she spent that time recording messages for me and my dad. Lily wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. She told me not to be sad for too long. She told me to keep reading stories and to find people who needed to hear them. She told me that the best way to remember someone is to carry their love forward into the world. The dragon lowered his head until his great golden eye was level with Lily's face. And that is why you came to sit with a dying dragon. Because your mother taught you that no one should face the end alone. Yes, Lily whispered. Then your mother was wiser than most Draconith who ever lived, Calvorthus said. And you honor her memory by being here. Lily leaned forward and pressed her forehead against the dragon's snout. His scales were warm and rough against her skin. and she could feel the slow rhythm of his ancient heart. "I miss her every day," she said. "I know," the dragon said. "I miss my people every day as well. Perhaps that is why we understand each other. We are both carrying the weight of those who are gone. They stayed like that for a long time." The human child and the dying dragon, finding comfort in each other's grief. And outside the window, the stars burned on, indifferent and eternal. But inside that small room, there was warmth and connection and the beginning of something that neither of them had expected to find. Commander Nathan Morgan knew that his daughter was sneaking out at night. He was not a fool. And the station security logs showed Lily leaving their quarters every evening after he thought she was asleep. At first he worried about what she might be doing. But when he discovered she was spending her nights with the dying dragoneth, he did not know what to think. He went to see the dragon himself one morning when Lily was at her lessons. And he stood in the doorway of the medical ward, looking at the enormous creature who had somehow become his daughter's friend. "Commander Morgan," Kelvorthus said without opening his eyes. "You walk like your daughter. I recognized your footsteps." "I wanted to thank you," Nathan said. "Lily has been different since she started visiting you. She smiles more. She talks about the future again." The dragon opened one golden eye. "Your daughter has given me far more than I have given her. She sits with me when everyone else walks past. She shares her stories when she could be doing anything else. She treats me like a person instead of a relic. She lost her mother 3 years ago," Nathan said. "I think she understands what it means to be alone." "Yes," Kelvorthus said. "She told me about Grace. Your wife sounds like she was a remarkable woman." Nathan felt his throat tighten at the sound of his wife's name. "She was the best person I ever knew." "Then you have raised your daughter well." "Because Lily carries her mother's kindness." Nathan nodded and turned to leave. But the dragon's voice stopped him. "Commander, your daughter is the only being on this station who has treated me with dignity. When I die, I want you to know that she made my final days bearable. And that is a gift I can never repay." "Just let her keep visiting," Nathan said. "That is all she wants. She may come as long as I breathe," Kelvorthus said. And Nathan thought he heard something like affection in the dragon's ancient voice. The weeks passed, and Kelvorthus grew weaker. His scales lost more of their color. His breathing became more labored, and sometimes he would fall asleep in the middle of one of Lily's stories and not wake up for hours. But he always asked her to continue when he opened his eyes, as if the stories were a thread keeping him connected to life on the 43rd night. Lily noticed that the dragon seemed different, more alert, more present, as if he had gathered his strength for something important. "Lily Morgan," Kelvorthus said, "I have something I must give you." "You do not have to give me anything," Lily said. "I do not want anything from you." "I know," the dragon said. "That is why you deserve this gift." He shifted his massive body with obvious effort, and from beneath his coiled form, he withdrew something that made Lily gasp. It was a crystal about the size of her fist, but it was unlike any crystal she had ever seen. Light swirled inside it like a living thing. Colors she had no names for, dancing and shifting in patterns that seemed almost like words. "This is a memory stone," Kelvorthus said. "It is the most precious object my people ever created. And this one contains 12,000 years of Draconeth history." Lily stared at the crystal, her eyes wide. 12,000 years, everything, the dragon said. "Our stories and our songs, our science and our art, our triumphs and our failures, the names of every emperor and the dreams of every child. All of it is stored in the stone. Why are you giving it to me?" Kelvorthus was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was heavy with emotion. "When the plague destroyed my people, we made a choice. We decided that if we could not exist in our full glory, we would rather not exist at all. One by one, The survivors chose to end their own lives rather than live as a diminished species. Lily felt tears forming in her eyes. "That is so sad." "It was pride," the dragon said. "Foolish pride. We could not imagine being small, being weak, being just another species among many. So we chose oblivion instead." He pushed the crystal toward Lily with his snout. "I was supposed to destroy this stone when I died. Scatter its contents into a star so that no lesser species could ever access our knowledge. But I do not want to do that anymore." "Why not?" "Because of you, Lily Morgan. Because you showed me that there is value in being small, in being ordinary, in simply sitting with someone who needs company. Your human stories taught me that heroes do not have to be powerful. They just have to care." Lily reached out and took the crystal in both hands. It was warm against her palms, and she could feel a faint vibration like a heartbeat. "I do not know how to read this," she said. "You will learn," Kalevortha said. "The stone will teach you. It will show you our language and our history. And then I want you to do something for me. Anything. Tell our stories," the dragon said. "Share them with your people and with every other species you meet. Let the Draconith live on through human memory, since we could not live on in our own flesh." Lily held the crystal against her chest. "I will, I promise. I know you will," Kalevortha said. "Because you are your mother's daughter, and you understand that stories are how the dead stay alive." He lowered his great head and closed his eyes. And Lily sat beside him holding the memory stone, feeling the weight of an entire civilization in her hands. She did not understand yet what this gift truly meant, but she knew that her life had changed forever, and that she had been given a responsibility that was bigger than anything she had ever imagined. "Thank you," she whispered. "I will not let you down." The dragon did not answer, but his tail curled around her like a protective wall. And they sat together in the blue light while the memory stone pulsed with the heartbeat of a dying species. Kalevortha's died on the 57th night, when the station's lights had dimmed to simulate evening and the stars. Outside the window seemed brighter than usual. Lily was sitting beside him, telling a story about a little prince who lived alone on a tiny asteroid and traveled between worlds, learning about love and loss and what it means to be responsible for someone. She had reached the part where the prince decides to return to his rose when she noticed that the dragon had stopped breathing. She did not cry at first. She simply sat there holding the memory stone and looking at the great creature who had become her friend. His scales had lost all their color now, faded to a pale gray that looked almost silver in the dim light. And his golden eyes were closed forever. "I finished the story," she whispered. The little prince went home, just like Odysseus, just like all the heroes who understand that love is worth more than immortality. She stayed with him until her father found her at dawn, still sitting in her spot with the memory stone glowing softly in her lap. Nathan did not say anything. He just knelt beside his daughter and held her while she finally let herself cry. The funeral was held 3 days later, and every species on Outpost 7 came to pay their respects. Word had spread through the station about the human child who had kept vigil with the dying dragon, who had given him companionship when everyone else had turned away. And even the species who feared death or thought it was bad luck felt moved by what Lily had done. The Valkyrie brought flowers that had been grown in the darkness of their home world, pale blossoms that glowed with their own inner light. The Torvian merchants offered goods from their ships as tribute, rare metals and fabrics that they said were gifts for the dragon's journey to whatever afterlife awaited him. The Anlithi simply stood in respectful silence. Though they still did not fully understand why any of this mattered, Lily stood at the front of the gathering, holding the memory stone, and when the station's chaplain asked if anyone wanted to speak, she stepped forward. "Kalevortha's was the last of his kind," she said, her voice small but steady. He was alone for a very long time, and he thought that no one cared about him or his people anymore. She looked at the dragon's body, which had been arranged on a platform that would carry it into the heart of the nearby star. But he was wrong. He mattered. His people mattered. And I am going to spend my whole life making sure that no one ever forgets them. She held up the memory stone. This crystal contains everything the Draconeth ever were. Their stories and their science, their dreams and their mistakes. And I promise that I will share it with anyone who wants to listen. After the funeral, the platform carrying Kael'vorth's was released into space, and everyone watched as it fell toward the red dwarf star, growing smaller and smaller until it was just a point of light. And then nothing at all. 20 years later, Dr. Lily Morgan published the first complete translation of Draconeth culture. It filled 30 volumes and became required reading at universities across Coalition space. Scholars studied the dragon's science and found solutions to problems that had puzzled them for centuries. Artists discovered new forms of beauty in Draconeth music and poetry. And children everywhere learned the stories that Lily had been the first human to hear. She traveled constantly, giving lectures to packed auditoriums and visiting schools where young people of every species gathered to hear about the dragon, who had trusted a human child with the legacy of his entire civilization. She established the foundation for cultural preservation, which sent researchers to dying species across the galaxy, making sure that no one would ever face extinction without someone to remember them. But every year, on the anniversary of Kael'vorth's death, she returned to Outpost 7. The station had been converted into a memorial, a museum filled with artifacts and holographic displays that told the story of the Draconeth. And Lily would sit in the room where the dragon had lain and tell stories to whoever came to listen on the 20th anniversary. A young Valkyrie approached her after she finished speaking. "Why do humans do this?" the young one asked. "Why do you insist on being there when others are dying? Why do you care so much about remembering species that are gone?" Lily smiled. And in that smile was the echo of the little girl who had once sat on a cold floor beside a dying dragon. "Because stories are how we stay connected," she said, "to each other, to the past, to the people we have lost. When I sit with someone who is dying, I am telling them that their life mattered. And when I remember someone who has died, I am keeping a part of them alive." She looked out the observation window at the same stars she had watched with Kael'vorth's all those years ago. "The Draconeth thought they would live forever through their empire," she said. "They thought that power and conquest would make them immortal. But empires fall and monuments crumble. What lasts is stories, passed from one person to another, one generation to the next, one species to another across the vastness of space." She held up the memory stone, which still glowed with the light of a civilization that had died, but was not forgotten. "This is what humanity offers the universe," she said. "Not conquest, not power, not technology. Just the simple promise that we will remember, that we will sit beside the dying and listen to their stories, that we will carry their memory forward even when they are gone." The young Valkyrie was quiet for a long moment, and then asked, "Will someone remember humans when we are gone?" Lily smiled again. "I hope so, but even if no one does, we will have spent our existence trying to remember everyone else. And I think that is a good way to have lived." She turned back to the window and looked at the stars, at the vast darkness that held the ghosts of 1,000 extinct civilizations, at the light that still traveled from suns that had burned out long ago somewhere out there. The atoms that had once been Kael'vorth's were scattered among the stars. And somewhere in the memory stone, his stories lived on. And somewhere in the heart of a human woman who had once been a lonely little girl, a dragon was still telling her that she was strange in all the best ways, and that was enough, that was more than enough, that was everything.